So, Kevin talked about me a little bit. My name's Kartwright.
Hey, Kartwright.
Hey guys. I came to LaGrange, Georgia 2 years ago. I played football for Lafayette Christian School. And now I'm here for a weekend visiting y'all. I just got done with wind-shaped camps for boys, which was an incredible experience. I would highly encourage y'all next summer, if you're old enough to maybe even try to get a job there, because it does just as much good for you as it does for the kids. One of the main things we talked about this year was the heart. Its focus was on the heart. And the very first day, they come up with this kind of silly slogan that was "Guard your heart," because that's where it starts. And it kind of made me laugh at first. I was like, all right, I feel like this is always kind of the conversation right now, is guard your heart. But when I started digging into the curriculum and started really studying it, I was kind of blown away. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. And I want to give a little bit of my story in order to do that. Kind of almost show you what not to do. My high school career, and all of y'all are in high school, my high school career was difficult. I had a pretty hard high school life, except for my senior year, which was pretty amazing. But how many of y'all have ever gone through really difficult times? Or just difficult times? I'm sure almost everyone can raise their hand and be like, yes, I've been through something that was really hard. I didn't know what to do. Well, I can relate with that. I want to talk to you guys about that. I want to talk to y'all about what we can do and how we can look at those hard times. Well, what does James say? Well, James in chapter 1, I think it's verse 2, says, consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. And I remember reading that when I was younger and just being like, okay, sure, yeah, we're going to be like, yay, praise Jesus, my dad just died. And it was like, okay, I understand it, but really? I mean, yes, I need to consider it pure joy, whatever that means, but I'm going to be ticked. And then I started living life, and I started going through really difficult things, and my perspective on it changed a little bit once I was done with that stuff. I was able to see that verse in a whole new way. I'll give you a little background on myself. I'm one of 5. I have an older brother, Dakota, a younger brother, Crockett, and 2 younger sisters, Haven and Eliza Jane. And I love all of them. But when I was in high school, everything started to change. We kind of had this beautiful picture of a family. We had something that was incredible and amazing, and it just seemed like everything was perfect. Our lives were great, except for my younger brother. When I was 3 years old, my younger brother Crockett was born, and he had cerebral palsy and Down West syndrome and autism and a bunch of other diseases that I can't even pronounce. And that basically kept him at a learning ability of a 2-month-old. So until he was 12, when he passed away, he couldn't do anything. He couldn't sit up by himself, he couldn't eat, he couldn't go to the bathroom, he couldn't bathe himself. And I'm not going to talk too much about him. Maybe a little bit later on I will. But I would love it if y'all would come up to me afterwards and talk to me about that, because he taught me so much. I tell people all the time that, without ever saying a word, he taught me more than anyone I know. But anyways, when I was 15, so kind of at the beginning of my high school, my younger brother died. He just, he had been unhealthy his whole life, and he passed away. And I can't describe to you the kind of feelings that go through you when your brother dies. Even if he does have problems, that's not supposed to happen, especially as a younger brother. Your younger brother's not supposed to die before you do, let alone at 15. So that went down, and that was really difficult. My family took that blow, and then my brother went off to college, and he was gone. And honestly, my brother, and some of us have been through this, he kind of fell away. He messed up. He did a lot of things that weren't biblically correct, and brought a lot of pain and anguish to us. And that was really hard for me, because that was like seeing Superman get shot down. That was difficult. And through all of that, we moved twice. And amidst all of this, my family was going through great turmoil. I was seeing my parents in ways that I'd never seen them before. And I didn't know how to take it. I didn't know what to do with it. I'd never seen my dad be broken. I'd never seen my dad cry. I'd never seen my mom be so destroyed that she couldn't even get out of bed some days. And I felt like for some reason, I felt like I had to carry all of this on my shoulders. I felt like I had to put it all on me. I felt like I had to be like this perfect child that never made any mistakes. I don't know. Some of you know me in high school. I was starting to get out of it when y'all knew me, but I was an uptight individual. I couldn't calm down. I was very just like, this is the way it needs to be. This is how it is. Very like to the books. Anything that was a little bit different than what I thought, I was like, no, I don't agree with that. It's wrong. And part of that was because I felt like I had to get all tightened up because of my brother. My older brother was gone. And part of it was because I felt like everyone was looking at me as like the new oldest. And I couldn't mess up because my brother messed up and I couldn't do that. And then through all of this, I find that when you're dealing with holding everything on you and you don't want anyone to see anything that you're struggling with, you really start to struggle, or I really started to struggle internally. I started to having my own little things, my own little world, things that I dealt with that nobody else knew about. Things that I was looking at that I shouldn't have looked at. And I was scared to tell anybody because I felt like everyone was looking at me and be like, he's the perfect kid, he never has any issues. And then this really dumb thing happened. I met a girl, okay? And I was a sophomore in high school. I want everyone to close their eyes for just a second. Everyone close their eyes. Let your minds go blank. And being appropriate, your eyes aren't closed. Being appropriate, I want you to picture the most beautiful girl you've ever seen. Okay. That's okay. It's okay. Picture the most beautiful girl you've ever seen. For me, at that time in high school, for what I thought back then, that was my girlfriend. That was this girl that I met that I wanted. You can open your eyes now. So I had all this junk happen to me. I had all of these issues, and then there was this girl. And I was like, oh, she's perfect, she's amazing, I want to marry her, whatever, disgusting, revoltingness. And I felt like it couldn't get any better than this. I was going to do everything I could until I could marry her, right? And we moved again, and we came here. We came to LaGrange, Georgia. And so we were doing this long distance thing, and I was so devoted, and I was having so much frustrations with my older brother who was gone and who just kept failing me. It felt like my younger brother who was dead, my family that was in anguish. But I had this girl, and she was going to save me. And then I got a phone call. I got a phone call from her dad to my dad, telling him that it was over, that we weren't a thing anymore. And I remember just being angry. And just a little bit after that, my older brother got married. And I was like, really? I mean, like, I can do everything, I can try to do everything right possible. God, I continue to pursue you as much as I can. I was going to go to school, I was going to go to college, I was doing high school well, I was almost done, even in the beginning of my junior year. I was going to go to college, I was going to get done in like 2 years because I had this plan, and then I was going to get married, then I was going to go to seminary, and I was going to be a pastor, and then it was just gone. I didn't want to do any of that anymore. And I was just so angry, and I remember when my brother told me he was getting married, I remember walking out into the woods and just stomping around and just saying to myself, God, like, why? Why are you doing this to me? What did I do? You kill my brother, you take away my other brother, you make us move 5 times every time I start to make friends, and now you take the one thing that was the most important thing to me and you take it away. What are you doing? And then an answer, or I felt like at the time, an answer to that question, I was cutting wood on a table saw, and I got a little bit too close, and I almost lost 3 fingers in the table saw. And it split this nail all the way down to the middle knuckle. You could see bone all the way through the nail. took this big chunk in my thumb. It's amazing now that my hand looks normal. I don't understand it. But when the doctors looked at it, they were like, yeah, you came this close to losing 3 fingers. And I remember going from complete and total anger. I remember being so angry at God. I remember going from that to be completely and totally broken and just over life. And we were driving to the hospital, and I was sobbing. And it was the first time ever in high school that I allowed to just completely let my emotions out. And I was sobbing, and I remember my dad in the seat next to me. He looks at me, he's like, "Kartwright, like, does it really hurt that bad?" And I have, like, my hand's like just this bloody, disgusting mess. I don't even know if I'm able to use, like, catch a football again, let alone, I don't know, whatever. And I look at him and I say, Dad, I can't even feel it. Like, my adrenaline was up so much that I couldn't even feel my hand. I was just so, like, just dead to the fact that that I felt like God was doing all these things to me. And I remember just kind of walking around like a zombie for the next few weeks. Just totally over life. I wasn't doing school. I didn't even know what to do with myself. And then something happened. And I've always, when I've heard stories like this, I've been like, okay, that's super hokey. Like, give me a break. Really? But my mom had put my Bible on my bed. And I went to go move it. And when I went to go move it, because I wasn't going to read it. I'm not reading. Ain't nobody got time for that. And I went to go move it, and it opened up to 2 Samuel chapter 10. A really random passage. And I started reading, and it's all about how the king of the Ammonites realized that they had become a stench to David. That's what it says. And so they decided they're gonna fight David and his men. And David, in response, sends Joab and his brother and some of David's mighty men out with him. So the mighty men, like, that's a small, I mean, they're kind of like the Avengers. Like, they don't have superpowers, but they're amazing. Like, you can read about them, they do, like, incredible things. But it's still a small amount of men. And it says here that the Ammonites, although they've become a stench to David, the Ammonites hired the Syrians of Beth Rehob and the Syrians of Zobah, 20,000 foot soldiers, 1,000 men, and 12,000 men from all these different tribes. So that's 33,000 soldiers right there. And that's not even including the Ammonite, their soldiers. And they come up to Joab and his brother and the mighty men, and it says, when Joab saw that the battle was set against him, both in front and in the rear, he chose some of the best men of Israel and arrayed them against the Syrians. The rest of his men he put in charge of his brother, and he arrayed them against the Ammonites. So here's the situation. It says Joab saw the battle was set against him. Joab realized he was going to lose. Not only was he going to lose, he was going to die. You don't do the whole prisoner thing. And I'm sitting here reading this with my hand like in a club because my fingers are a mess. And I'm thinking, wow, this sounds familiar. This person, Joab and his brother, they're without hope. And I feel so hopeless. I wonder what's going to happen next. And I kept reading. And it says, Joab said, if the Syrians are too strong for me, then you shall help me. But if the Ammonites are too strong for you, then I will come and help you. And here it is. He says, be of good courage, and let us be courageous for our people and for the cities of our God. And may the Lord do what seems good to him. And I was like, wait, what? Like, here I am with feeling like I don't have anything, and I'm screaming at God. I'm practically cursing his name in the woods. Why? Why are you doing this to me? And Joab not only feels hopeless, but he feels like he knows he's going to die, and he doesn't do that. He says, be of good courage. Let the Lord do what seems good in his sight. And then I kept reading, and it talks about how they come out courageous. They come out and they won. And they survived. And David was able to send more men and get rid of this problem that they had. And I was like, okay, so Joab and his brother can trust God with their life, but even when their life is in dire circumstances, when they know they're going to die, maybe I can give God another chance. And I remember kind of closing my Bible and still feeling sad, still feeling frustrated, but being like, God, like I don't have anywhere else to turn. Like I'll trust you. Show me. I don't have anything left. Yes, I'm angry at you, but I don't have anywhere else to go. And I think it was about a week later, I was dragged to a pastor's dinner by my family, and I didn't want to go. And I remember getting there, and actually one of the two people that I first saw was actually Jenna and Jocelyn. And I remember kind of sitting there that night, and things got introduced to me that night. And all in one night, I was introduced to this church that I went to for the next year and a half. I met my mentor, who was Greg at the time, and Kevin took me under his wing a little bit later. I met one of my best friends, Jenna, who really helped in the healing process of just things that I had gone through at the time. I found a football team I was going to play for, and I heard about Impact 360. All in one night. None of which would have happened had I still been with my girlfriend in high school. And I remember being blown away, still feeling hurt, still feeling wounded from stuff that had happened to me, but walking away from that night and being like, okay, all right, you might know what you're doing. And through all of that, I was shown so much. And part of what I was shown was, okay, one of the lessons that I learned through my brother, Crockett, was when he died, at his funeral, my dad came up on the pulpit amidst probably about 500 people. And there was a lot of people who thought that it was better this way, that Crockett had died, because it was difficult. Like, we had to change the way we lived when he was around, just with things we had to do. And people were like, it's better this way. And my dad said, Crockett was a blessing. Sometimes just because something's easier doesn't make it better. And that stuck with me, and I applied that to my life. I was constantly doing the better choice, right? But I realized something, that I was doing it all for the wrong reasons, and I realized that when I read about the widow's mite, which is in Mark chapter 11, at the end of Mark. And what it's all about is Jesus and his disciples are in the synagogue, and the offering is taking place. And the way the offering worked back then is that the offering plate would be right in the middle of the church, and people would walk up and put their great amounts in the offering plate. And what they were saying was happening in this story is that people of wealth were coming up and putting large amounts into the offering plate. And I can just imagine the disciples being with Jesus and kind of elbowing each other, being like, oh, did you see that? Like, that was crazy. Like, that was a ton of money right there. And probably looking at Jesus like, what's he going to do? Like, is he going to bless them or something? And it doesn't say anything about what Jesus did. And then something crazy happens. A widow, an old widow comes up, and we don't know very much about her. We know that she's a widow, and we know that she's poor. So who knows what she looks like? I mean, she was probably ratchet, Like, I mean, gross, and probably smell a little bit, and probably old and just gross looking. And I mean, that's how I picture it in my head anyway. And it says she walks up to the offering plate, and I'm sure, like, you know, she walks up there, and everyone's kind of watching, like, what's this girl doing? Oh, really? And she walks up, and she puts down 2 copper coins in the offering plate. And in our day, that literally is basically 2 pennies. Like, seriously? I mean, think about it. If you're sitting in church and you're next to some ratchet old lady, and you get the offering plate and you turn it and you give it to her and she puts in 2 pennies, you're like, this guy. Like, really? But Jesus looks at his disciples and he says, I tell you the truth. These people over here, they gave out of their wealth. But this woman, out of how poor she was, gave everything she had to live on. Out of her poverty, she gave everything she had to live on. And this person is whom I'm pleased with. And this hit me because I was sitting there constantly doing the good things, right? Constantly going on the mission trips, constantly making the right decisions. But I realized I was doing it for the right reasons, the wrong reasons. I was doing it so people would see me. I was doing it so people would look at me as like the person that had it all together. And I was doing it so that God would love me more. Like, I knew I was saved, but I was doing it so that God would be more pleased with me. And I realize now that in reality, I wasn't that good person. I was broken and I was destroyed. And I couldn't do anything. But what's crazy is that God wanted the heart change more than He wanted my actions.